You're listening to a Comics XF podcast.
X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every story from A to Z.
Where we rank every story from A to Z.
Where we rank every story from A to Z.
Where we rank every story from A to Z. I'm Adam.
See, I was gonna see how long you would let us do that. I'm Zach.
I wasn't going too far.
You started the bit, so I was gonna see what your commitment to the bit was, and the answer was the appropriate amount to offset me. Yes. Hi, Adam.
Hey, man, what's up? It's weird seeing you like through a computer because the last time I saw you was like in New Jersey. So
yeah, like 2 weeks ago. It was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Since the last time we recorded, and now, which was actually a lot farther back in the past than you would think, because we doubled up on a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Me and Adam had dinner with friends. It was great.
So nice.
We had dinner with. I had dinner that week with no less than 5 different people who have been on this podcast.
Isn't that nice? You're just getting out there amongst the people, shaking hands, kissing babies.
That's what you get to do when you're in the highfalutin HVAC world of New York City. And instead, I get to be in the highfalutin HVAC world of Cleveland, Ohio right now, which is less metropolitan.
Less glamorous, but glad to see you. And
there is a Topgolf outside of my hotel window. So I've got that going for me, which is nice. And there's only one Topgolf in the Northwest Ohio area. So Northeast Ohio. So if you really wanted to dox me, it would be a weird way to do it because I'm not in this hotel by the time you're hearing this.
Yeah, by the time they get to you, you won't be there.
I'm not in that Embassy Suites. Like, I'm going
to ask you a stupid question. Is the Topgolf facing away from you or towards you? Like, are they hitting the balls towards you? He's got to look.
It's away. It is away.
Okay. It's just imagining like stray golf balls hitting your.
Well, they have the very tall. They have the very tall nets that you can see from the highway.
Oh my god. So funny.
I have not partaken in the Topgolf that's near me because it's raining. And also, I don't dislike golf, but it's not I'm not going to go do it by myself.
As I say to Anna on a regular basis, the one true golf for me is mini golf. But I do have a Topgolf gift card sitting around because I did promise my daughter that I would take her. So some point this summer, going to Topgolf.
Hold on. This doesn't have to be in the podcast. I just need to know for my own edification. Adam, have you ever golfed?
Real golf?
Do you know how to golf?
Zach, come on. No, of course not. What kind of businessman, what kind of traveling salesman do you take me for?
I take you for a guy who's 40. Like, you're a 40-year-old white dude. That odds are you golfed. You've golfed in some capacity. I'm not being crazy here. No,
the alligator opens its mouth. The ball goes through. There's a pirate over there.
You should take your daughter to Topgolf. It'll be a good, fun time for the whole family.
Yes.
You should probably go to a real driving range and work out your shot beforehand so you can impress everybody.
I'm going to embarrass myself. It's going to be great. What I'm not going to embarrass myself on is this episode tonight because I loved this prompt that we got. It was a real challenge, and I think we nailed it.
You say we. I want to be very clear. On this prompt, I said, Adam, can you figure out this one? Adam, can you do it? Because I had a lot on my plate. And I was like, Adam, let's share the load here.
Some credit. You totally selected one of these stories. So
I did. You're right. I did. I actually selected 3, and then Adam overruled me on 2 of them, which I think is really funny and good. And he made a better choice, which is the most beautiful part of this.
Well, we got to tell people what this is because this is a fun one.
That's a great thing. This is this was a Patreon request. You've heard about our Patreon, right? If you're listening to this podcast.
I have. But I'm a host, so
That's true. Well, if you haven't listened to the podcast before and you want to know, well, we're 5 minutes into this X-Men podcast and nary a mutant has been spoken about. Where can I go to support these fine gentlemen? That's great. You can go over to patreon.com/Battle of the Atom. You can reach deep down into your hearts and pocketbooks and toss a couple of coins into our coffers. And you know what happens at that $5 a month level, Adam?
You get a bespoke episode based on your recommendation.
And here's the thing that I've noticed about recommendations.
Yes, what's that?
You know how parasocial relationships are so hot right now?
Oh, so hot. Yeah.
Well, did you know that it is possible to win our love and affection and reasonable to do if you make a funny enough suggestion or a good enough that we want to talk about? That will make us say, I like this person.
Yeah, you can absolutely earn our undying respect.
Getting a good grade in podcast listener is easy to do and possible to achieve.
So who achieved these high marks this week, Zach?
It was Robert. It was Patreon supporter Robert. If you want to be like Robert, you can go over to patreon.com/Battle of the Atom. Do all those things that we just said. And I think that it is a really fun time to talk about comics where, and I quote, where the characters are drawn, all the characters are drawn the same / similarly.
All the characters are drawn / look similarly, and immediately our brains went to work and we started to think about some different artists to draw people all the same. And wouldn't you know it, we've covered a lot of books where that's happened already.
We're not going to name names of people who have been nice enough to show up for minutes on this podcast before. But when we land that plane, we I don't know where I was going with that. I thought I could get there. I had to work the word land in there somewhere. Anyway, we struggled with this. And by we, I mean, I thought about it for 2 seconds and then I punted it over to Adam and it said, Adam, this one's yours. I will do, what will I do? Oh, someone said a random, very popular character. I can find 3 stories for that. That's easy.
Well, just to give listeners an idea of how much thought we put into this episode, I think we pushed this episode back like 4 times. So while we were still brainstorming, so
this episode has been somewhat delayed.
All right, so let's get into our first story where characters all look very similar or the same, and this is actually a two issue arc of X Factor Volume 1 that I have been wanting to talk about for a long time. This is X Factor 63 and 64. It's an Iceman story where he fights against the Cyburai.
This is written by Weezy Simonson, and drawn, and it's also written by Whilce Portacio.
Yes, Whilce.
Before we say anything else, we love Whilce Portacio. Cannot emphasize that enough before we get into anything else here. I saw Whilce Portacio walking around at New York Comic Con last year, and I said, Whilce, good to see you around. Glad you're doing well, bud. I don't know Whilce. He doesn't know me, but I like it when Whilce Portacio is doing well.
I mean, Whilce is technically a friend of the show. He has been on a
friend of the show, Whilce Portacio. I forgot about that one.
Super special. And, this is the heyday of Whilce Portacio. He is sharing a studio with Jim Lee and Scott Williams. He is being inked by future comic skater Art Thibert in a lot of these issues, but this is his 90s heyday. Along with the other pre-image crew. And I gotta say, he's kicking butt. These 2 issues really do look spectacular. The amount of, cleverness that Whilce uses in his page layouts, in the sort of action quality to what he does to propel you forward in the story. And I'll give him a lot of credit. There is some really good character acting going on here in terms of facial expressions, in terms of the sort of nuance of what's going on with these characters. So when we say, I want to be very clear about what we're saying here about characters looking the same, that criticism is specifically leveled at the villains of this story, who are very difficult to discern from one another, as they all wear matching purple mech suits, and they are the Cyburai, the cybernetic samurai who have come to abduct Iceman's girlfriend, Opal Tanaka, and bring her back to Japan.
So here's the thing. I hate the Cyburai. I don't get them. I don't see the appeal. I also think it's weird that there's two X-Men who have a girlfriend whose grandfather and father and whatever are Yakuza leaders, and have secret ninja armies. Like,
listen, Opal had no idea. She was being hidden.
Opal had no idea.
Yeah.
Opal would rather go to a record store and find some sick vinyl.
Man.
She wants to ride that new wave, even though it's still 1990. She wants to be the coolest person you've ever seen. She wants her MTV. Unfortunately,
can I just say for a second, as a fan of this era, I really did like that character. You know, like this was
got nothing against Opal Tanaka. Except for everything about how she was written in that Icons Iceman series.
Oh, that was bad. Yeah,
that was really bad. That deep Opal Tanaka character assassination in that one. Go back to our episode about that if you want to hear more. I guess that one was weird.
Not here though, where she is brought back to Japan against her will. You know, all she's trying to do is have dinner with Bobby, and is abducted basically on page 2. And we get introduced to the clan Tatsu, and her grandfather, who basically wants to marry her off to one of the Cyburai.
And like Lord Tatsuo, who is her grandfather, here's the thing that as I was reading this, I couldn't get over. I tried to push through it, and I could not. He's just Shingen. He's just Shingen Harada. That's him. That's all he is. He's Lord Shingen.
You're not wrong.
He even has a robot guy that's a samurai. Yeah. He just has many robot samurais. How is this? It's not like there's just a different comics thing that's like this. There's a different X-Men thing that's like this, and it's one of the most popular X-Men stories.
Well, so much so that when Bobby goes to rescue her, of course, they rely on Mariko Yoshida and the Yoshida clan, who, you know, what's really, I mean, it's very funny that these things overlap so much that they're basically the same. But I also really appreciate that this is a series of events in which Bobby just will not listen to anyone else and has to be like the big, brave macho guy who comes in and saves his girlfriend, much to everyone's chagrin. Because Mariko very much knows that if she sends her ninjas in to rescue Opal, they can get her back. But Bobby has to be like, oh, I'm going to use my ice powers. And it's like, Bobby, calm down, man. Calm down.
They don't know what to do with Bobby, right? Like at this point, and this is kind of true for all of X Factor. Like it was a bad pitch to start the series. I'm not going to disagree, but it was at least a pitch. It was at least a direction.
Sure.
And Simonson had a direction to keep that book going up until about Inferno.
Yeah, and you get into the post-Judgment War era where, you know, Wills is starting to, and Jim Lee are starting to give story beat ideas, and things are, you know, relying a little bit more on just each one of these characters having a girlfriend, and then, you know, just kind of leaning towards what eventually becomes Endgame after this, which is more action oriented. It's not as much character focused.
And this whole thing is very action oriented. Mm-hmm. Endgame's action oriented, but it's tied in with enough stuff to like make me care. This one makes me confused. And like I've talked a lot of stuff about Bob Harris, and rightly so. I get why Bob Harris in 1991 is like, folks, we need to shake things up a little bit.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment.
Because most of the books are floundering in one way or another.
Mhm.
Even if you're someone like me who enjoys Chris Claremont being really weird at the end of his term.
Yeah.
Like, I get it.
You could see at the time that readers might be scratching their heads a little bit, right? So
Yeah, like, what is
I
this?
get it.
What's this?
I get it.
Why does this comic exist? That's the question.
Yeah.
Because I feel like these two issues they exist because the book had to come out every month. Will Portacio wanted to draw stuff.
There you go. And that's the core of this.
Wheezy is just pulling it together best she can. Like, okay, same thing she was doing with Rob. She was like, we're going to try and make this happen.
And it works. I got to say, I mean, there is
it? Hold on. You think this works?
Wait a minute. This could be way worse. You know, here's where I think, here's where I think it breaks down, right? Is because Wills wants to be telling this story about, let's say outdated Japanese traditions of marrying, the family member off, et cetera, and this whole backstory about, how Opal was hidden and the story of her parents. And then, this idea of humanizing this, one of the Cyburai. I couldn't tell you. I know he has longer hair than the others, but he still looks exactly like.
Is it the one whose name is Hero?
It might be Hero. Yeah.
That would make thematic sense.
And that's where it really kind of falls apart, is because you really can't, like, Opal is doing such a good job of standing up for herself and, being the modern woman that she is, and they're asking her to accept these very outdated misogynist traditions, and she's like not having it. But the comic does kind of ask you to kind of say, oh, well, maybe give it a thought. Maybe you do want to live with me as a Cyburai. And it's like, okay, I don't know about that.
Here's the dirty little secret. That Will Portacio and all those Image guys were importing whatever anime and manga that they could and just like devouring that stuff. They were like, oh yes, this is what I want to draw like. And I mean, for Portacio, it makes sense. He grew up in the Philippines. Yeah.
And I mean, he's also, you can see Jim Lee's influence with, Eastern influences coming into Uncanny.
Absolutely.
Like
they're all coming from the same mold.
Yeah. Like these ideas are transferring in and flowing in terms of the stories that they want to tell. And, that's essentially why this is, because Wills wants to draw these characters, and he does some very good character. There's a page of Opal reacting to who her mother is. That is some of Wills's best acting, in terms of depicting realistic expressions. But the rest of the time it is, I want to draw these guys with metal plates all over them because that's what I love to draw. It's like when he does the Into the Void arc and
it's exactly like that.
Sunfire shows up and he's basically a Cyburai. It's like,
I was thinking that the whole time. I was like, okay, I see how he got to that Sunfire design.
Yeah.
Good on you, Wills. It's never getting over, but good on you.
So I do think this qualifies as a book where lots of characters. I will say there's a very funny joke that one of the Cyburai says that all Gaijin look the same, which is extra funny because all of the Cyburai are fairly indistinguishable.
Also, Bobby is made of ice. I mean, like, point taken. I also cannot tell people apart, period. There was a running joke while my son plays soccer, especially at the start of the season, where my wife will yell out a kid's name and I'll be like, which one is that? All these little blonde kids look the same to me, which is true.
Yeah.
But also, like, I get it.
I did appreciate that.
It's weird that he's an Iceman. He is an Iceman, though.
when they say the joke, he's not. They like,
Fair.
the Cyburai are like, we threw that guy out of a window. He should be dead. Oh wait, that can't be him.
It is early enough. Yes. Okay.
Funny.
Fair enough.
So anyway, this definitely qualifies, but I think we should talk about it in comparison to the rest of the stories on our big old list.
Well, because here's the thing, Adam. We have been ranking every X-Men story from best to worst for years now. Truly, years we've been doing this. We have ranked 1,041 different X-Men stories. Too many.
Wow.
I kind of want to tell Marvel, take another break. Just remember what y'all were doing in like 2015 to 2017. Let's do that again. Reset, regroup, and then when you've earned them, you can do X-Men comics again.
Yeah.
Just you've already done too many. You've done too many comics, period.
Just give us
It's really about us. I can't keep up. I can't. There's already 1,041 stories on this list. That's too many. We have ranked them from best to worst, with the best being the House of X Powers of 10, the 250th best being Omega Red from the Jim Lee X-Men. We got Wolverine and the X-Men 29 at 500. That's Key to the Future. At 750, we have Deadpool Max number 4, where he goes to Peru. At 1,000, we have Starjammers number 2. That's a Dune comic. That comic's just Dune.
Mm-hmm.
And at 1,041, we have 2099 World of Tomorrow. Adam.
Hi.
I'm going to let you start because I know that this comic means more to you than it means to me.
I don't know that it means anything to me. I do enjoy it. It does give me a little bit of a nostalgia kick, but I will say
the fact that you enjoy it means that it means more to you than me.
Probably. All right. So I want to just put some table setting here. I think it is better than at 715 X Factor Judgment War.
Possibly. I can 715 is Judgment War. Okay, but Judgment War is too long. We all agree with this.
I also want to just put another thing out there, just so we're contextualizing this.
Yeah.
The Into the Void arc that we were just talking about is up at 533.
Jeez, why did we do that?
I'm just trying to place some context on
folks. Look, you're right. This is worse than Into the Void, though. Into the Void.
It is.
Into the Void has a interesting enough character beat to it with the stuff with Colossus and his brother. There is more meat on the story bones of Into the Void. Is this better than Blood Ties, though? X-Men Avengers Blood Ties? A bad comic, no disagreement. But is it better than Blood Ties?
I mean, I really don't like Blood Ties, so...
I'm not calling Blood Ties good. I want to be so clear.
As a 2-issue arc, I would say it's probably at least more cohesive than the Muir Island saga at 706. This has a beginning, middle, and end, and is visually consistent throughout.
Okay, but something else that has a beginning, middle, and end, and is more visually consistent, and I can tell all the characters apart, and makes me giggle, is Curse of the Mutants at 707. A comic I hate, kind of, but also weirdly, I don't know. I think Curse of the Mutants is bad, but I enjoyed reading Curse of the Mutants.
Then I would say it's definitely better than...
it's better than Life of X. The first arc of Astonishing.
Right, of Astonishing X-Men 1 to 6 at 709. And what the heck is X-Men 65 and 66?
This is why we need to put labels on these things. I don't know why Zach, it's the Xenox stuff. It's the stuff with the Xenox. Sure, fine. It can be better than that.
All right. So this is our new 708, the Cyburai X Factor 63 and 64. So that was a pretty clear-cut case of a bunch of characters that are all very similarly designed and drawn in a very similar way. And this next one is taking the prompt in a different direction. This was the one that you immediately suggested that we had to do. Zach, why don't you tell us a little bit about this arc of Generation X?
Okay, so this is the Operation Zero Tolerance arc of Generation X. And I need to emphasize again, lots of love to Chris Picciallo. We love him. He's our friend, not a friend of the show, but could be.
Sure. One of our faves.
Chris is great. We've talked about him at length on the show. This is in Chris's chibi era, I like to call it.
Yes, it is.
He's experimenting, and I would say that given the direction his art took immediately after this, you could argue that it's a failed experiment.
Well, we were just talking on a recent episode about the flashback issue that happens
Right.
in publishing.
Immediately
it happens
before this.
Right. The issue before this is the flashback issue. And I did talk about how he was playing around with proportion in really interesting ways in that issue. However, none of the characters look de-aged. And one of the things that you learn when you learn how to draw different ages of people, and different artists are more successful at this than others, is that when you're drawing someone who's very young, you have a tendency to draw larger features, right? And smaller bodies. And
speaking of someone who has a baby at home, accurate.
Yeah. You know, you want those sort of like big cartoony anime eyes, you know, because proportionally
babies have those.
That's what babies have, because they're growing into their features. So we've seen books where the characters sort of take on a de-aging quality. The one that always stands out is Brett Blevins on New Mutants. This is a very similar comp to that, because all of a sudden, even from the cover, Monet in particular, like, and Husk up front, I mean, they're borderline X-babies the way that they're drawn.
Monet has never looked more like she's really two kids in a trench coat.
Which is also revealed in this arc.
It's coming. It's coming. By the way, James Robinson writes this story. He's doing a fine job.
Yes. Inks by Al Vey.
Yeah. What, you point out that if I'm thinking covers, what really stands out to me is how Emma is drawn, because Emma's drawn with the exact same body type and style, same facial features as the other girls in this comic, but Emma is very explicitly older than them. She needs to visually distinctly be a step removed from these kids, and not just in the way that she looks, but how he dresses the character. Like, she feels oddly de-aged. Same with Banshee, though he has stubble, which ages him up automatically.
Well, it's funny because Emma and Banshee and Penance are on the run from Operation Zero Tolerance, and the rest of the gang have gone to Skin's old stomping grounds and are crashing with an old friend who, God knows how old this kid is. Like, could be an infant. I couldn't really tell you. This surfer bro that they crash with, and we're really getting kind of like Chris showing off. I mean, there's this great 2-page spread of
the Venice
Beach boardwalk, right? And
that
just like
that spread's so good.
Yeah, people on stilts, people on a unicycle,
juggling. From Death, the High Cost of Living is there.
Yep. Yeah, lots of little cameo things in there. So he's showing off, but he's also definitely experimenting, and it's weird. It's very weird.
I would love to interview Chris and just be like, "Hey, bud, what were you doing in 1997? Like, obviously, it was an experiment. You wanted to try something. What were you doing?" Because it's so bizarre to see, because like he's de-aging these characters visually.
Yep.
But they're his characters. It's not like he is a new artist taking a new take on it. These are like his statement trademark characters.
Yeah,
and
if you
he's doing something wild.
If you look at the cover, so while Skin and the rest of the group are running from Operation Zero Tolerance Sentinels, Emma and Banshee are having this fight in this argument with Penance Emplate about whether to give Penance back to Emplate. And Banshee's firmly against. And White Queen is thinking about it because she seems to have figured something out about the character. And if you look at the cover to issue 30, if you told me that Emma Frost on that cover was a 12-year-old girl or a 10-year-old girl,
You'd
I
say
would be
yes.
like, yeah. I mean, that's certainly not the Emma that we. It's funny too because he just de-aged Emma in the flashback issue, and she looked like a teenager. But
Yes.
here, she's supposed to be an adult and looks even younger than her like 16-year-old counterpart did in the flashback issue.
He is stretching exaggeration so far. And
Yeah.
generally, I like and respect that about Bachalo. Like, he will do that. I think this is probably stepping way too far into the other direction and saying, okay, this is not working. We need to pull it back a bit. But I'd rather someone figure out where the boundaries are. Like, I do that when someone doesn't give me firm boundaries. I have a tendency to push past those boundaries until someone lets me know, oh, these are where the real boundaries are. Now we found the boundaries together. Now we can stay inside of them.
It is a lot of fun always to watch, the evolution of styles as things go by. Story wise, this is a mixed bag because while all of this is happening, you also have Jubilee who's escaping from Operation Zero Tolerance. I think we've talked
And
about
making
that.
friends with a sentinel.
Yep.
Her name is Daria.
Who again could be 10 years old. Jubilee could be 10 years old. They all kind of look that way.
Yes.
But in the background, Robinson is seeding all of this stuff about for listeners who don't know, Monet turns out to be twins in a trench coat.
I mean, in a Monet coat. It turns out real Monet was actually Penance, and Monet's twin sisters. The sisters are twins. They are just Monet's sisters, to be clear.
Yeah.
They were actually Monet the whole time. And what's weird about that is Monet definitely like makes out with like Sync right before we find out that she's actually two children. That's weird.
Some interesting choices being made here, especially when all the characters look so little and then turn out to actually be little.
If that was a choice that was made early in Generation X, and then they were like, well, she's going to be two kids now, that's one thing. This now is just like a weird, like, oh, choice to be made. Because you knew what you were doing. I don't know. It's never commented on. It's weird when you know where the story is going to end up, and the story is going to end up with Sync having gotten through this rebel and all this Sentinel stuff, holding Sync, who looks like he's like 8, holding two smaller children and drawn the same way, just shrunk down.
Mm-hmm.
Just two smaller children in each of his arms. It's like, I guess this is Monet. What's that mean? And that's where we end it. It's a Generation X went off the rails real quick. It never fully recovered.
No, and if you flip to the next issue and it's like against the what is it, the Circus of Crime?
Yes,
and
that's
like they're just like, yeah, let's just tell some other stories, like no continuity whatsoever with what we were just talking about. Completely. You've got Mark Buckingham, so they're at least trying to hint back to the original look of the book, but it's some wild choices being made here, man. So I loved that you picked this one because it really is interesting how the style that Chris chooses for these issues really does have like, it's not like he's just doing it to one character. He's doing it to all of the characters. It's fascinating.
I'm intrigued. And here's the thing, we haven't talked about him too much. James Robinson's not doing a bad job. He's actually, he gets the voices of the characters like spot on right from the start.
Sure.
He's thrown into a crossover, and I don't know who decided they needed to resolve this M stuff this way with Penance. But they decided that that's what they were going to do. And I get the feeling that wasn't I have no frame of reference for this. I get the feeling that wasn't James Robinson's pitch when he got on the book,
I don't know. I'd have to go back and
Because
see
he
what
only
the
does a
origin
handful of
is.
issues.
Yeah. So if we look at the big old list, we do have a bunch of Generation X down in the 500s. At 516, we have What Happened to Cassidy Keep. At 519, we have Chamber versus Omega Red. And
Oh, it's not as good as any of those. It's not as good as those.
Generation X 24, Home for the Holidays, is at 520.
Oh, Home for the Holidays is better. Where's the one where they go to like Japan for a weird 2 issues? Because this is better than that.
Okay, so Big Trouble in Madripoor, which is Generation X 53 and 54, is down at 692.
Yes, we are better than that.
I also think we're probably better than the time that Terry Dodson and co revisited an Uncanny 281, which was Gen X 55 and 56. That's up at 664.
Is this better or worse than Monet Vampire Hunter?
I think this is better than Monet Vampire Hunter. That's at 634, but I don't think it would go much higher. I'm looking here and well, it's probably better than like Wolverine Global Jeopardy at 629.
It's probably better than Global Jeopardy. Here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
I do think this is better than War of the Realms Uncanny X-Men.
Okay.
I don't think it's better than the Otherworld arc of Uncanny X-Force at 614.
Yeah, that's fair.
Below that is Claws and Webs.
That is fun.
Which has Sam Keith art. Never mind. That Sam Keith doing Sam Keith well is better than Chris Bachalo doing an experimental style.
I would put it right below that then, because I do think it's better than we have 2 New Mutants Volume 3 arcs at 617 and 618. I think this is better than both of those.
Then it is so. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be.
All right.
For
so
words of wisdom, let it be.
616, Generation X Volume 1, 29 to 31. Chris Bachalo tries Chibi.
Hey,
and this last one, man, I'm so happy I found this issue. We're not going to do.
I had no information about this comic before you had put it on. In the cover alone, it throws me off just looking at it.
It's visual dissonance here. So
there is a lot of visual dissonance.
Yeah, this is Alpha Flight Volume 1, 107. It is written by Scotty Lobdell. It is penciled and inked by Tom Morgan. And it is the first part of a multi-issue arc that we are not covering the entire thing of because the rest of it doesn't apply, called World Tour 1992. This is the first part, which definitely qualifies for this prompt, because Alpha Flight teams up with X Factor to investigate a interesting horror story of sorts, which results in Alpha Flight basically cosplaying as X Factor next to X Factor. And so everybody, there's like 10 people on each panel, all dressed up as 90s Larry Stroman X Factor.
Which is buck wild.
It's crazy.
The idea of World Tour 1992 by Scott Lobdell and Tom Morgan is that Alpha Flight is going to visit 3 different countries and see how their government superhero teams work.
Mm-hmm.
So first stop is the United States of America. The last stop is Russia. Now, I'm going to start right here. Adam, who do you think is there in Russia?
The whatchamacallit, the guys, the Red Guardian or some major.
None of them are there. They just work with the KGB.
Oh, I don't like that.
That's weird, especially when you already have Ursa Major and Dark Star.
Yeah, why is the name of their super
the
team?
guy David Harbour plays?
Red Guardian.
Red Guardian. Whiplash? Is he Russian or is it the other guy that's Russian? It
But
doesn't
what is
matter.
the name of their superhero team? Why is that escaping me right now?
The Winter Guard. It's the Winter Guard.
The Winter Guard. Yeah, I don't understand why they're not there. And frankly, I'm not worried about those other 2 issues. I am just
hold on. Do you know where they go? Do you know where the other place they go is?
No.
Europe. All of Europe.
Oh, just Europe. That's Okay. Okay.
Yes, you get Ursula, La Paragine, Shamrock, Micromax. Micromax is there.
Oh boy.
A character named Prodigy. No, not that one.
Hmm.
And a character named Omerta. Not that one either.
Oh boy. See, I didn't even get that far.
I mean, I didn't read those comics. I just wanted to know what the rest of this was in case I needed to. However, I will say that the Europe one does feature Brain Drain as the antagonist.
Hey, that's fun.
The thing that people need to know about Brain Drain, famous character from Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, is that he was a Nazi robot brain and he got better.
Great. I'm happy. Reform that brain.
He has reformed.
So we should give people kind of like a visual general idea of what this looks like. So if you can picture what Strowman X Factor looks like, I need
the blue and the gold.
Yeah, with all the zippers and the flaps, right? So you need to picture this cast of Alpha Flight in these costumes, right? So
this cast is
Sasquatch, who is looking pretty similar to Guido, strong guy.
Yeah, he's a strong guy.
Right? We have Guardian in the Madrox costume. We have
Is Guardian in the Madrox? No, Guardian is in like a Val Cooper looking costume.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's Heather McNeil. I'm getting the wrong Guardian.
Yes, you're getting the wrong Guardian. That Guardian, you're thinking of the Guardian that's been dead.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit tough because Aurora and Guardian are both kind of dressed in kind of Val Cooper like
Aurora. I think Aurora is supposed to evoke the Polaris more because of her hair.
Yeah.
But it's a hard sell. Polaris has the green wavy hair, which is different.
Yeah.
You have the Havoc look being worn by North Star.
Yes. And then Weapon Omega, Kyle Gibney is in the Madrox costume. So
Weapon Omega, who I forgot was not the Weapon Omega that Brian Michael Bendis came up with. That's just Wild Child. It took me a second.
Love that.
That's our friend Wild Child. He is weird reading Alpha Flight, a comic that I will not read. Like, not happening.
This is also just a bizarre little story because you would think that this would be, I don't know, somehow themed around, diplomacy or allies.
Possibly, at the very least, juxtaposing American and Canadian ideals of superheroism and what would make these places different.
But no, that's actually not what this story is about. This story,
not even a little.
This story is about. So, readers, just picture this because I know you haven't read this issue. Picture
none of us have read this issue. It's fine.
X Factor in all of their regalia. Alpha Flight also in the same regalia. Multiple Man making multiple of himself in multiple man. So we've got like these X Factor costumes everywhere, and yet this is a very short. Almost like I almost thought there might have been more pages. I thought, like, what did I miss? About a dead bride who died before she could marry her husband and then resurrects zombies in a cemetery so that she can have the wedding that she didn't while she was alive. What?
So important that she is a mutant who died from food poisoning.
Yes.
And the traumatic event that awoke her mutant powers was that she had an autopsy performed on her.
Jesus.
It's
funny.
Weird.
It's funny. I'm not gonna lie.
They have a wedding, is what happens.
Yeah, and that's what's nice about it. They make
a lot of jokes about having to go to Poughkeepsie, which maybe that's a New Yorker joke. That joke doesn't land anywhere else in the country.
No, but like this could easily just go into sort of, this is a terrible bridezilla, and like that seems to be where they're leaning. But then the solution is not to beat up the dead. The solution is that the husband is like, oh, you know what? I actually do still want to marry you. And when he does, she turns to dust and the comic suddenly ends and there's no epilogue whatsoever. And I was like looking for more story. It's a weird,
It's
weird comic.
Hey, I'm just like flipping past some Alpha Flight things because I know that in addition to Alpha Flight dressing up like X Factor and X Factor's matching costumes, Alpha Flight also has matching, identical, very hard to distinguish costumes in this era. But I just jumped back. This is Alpha Flight 107, right?
Yes.
106, of course, is North Star's incredibly famous coming out issue, which is not referenced after this, which I'm not going to blame Scotty Lobbs for that one. That was very much a internal Marvel decision.
It's kind of wild that happens like right before this arc.
Kind of wild that happens right before that. Do you know what happens the issue before that?
Looks like Weapon Omega is Santa.
Yes.
So weird.
I have no interest in reading John Byrne's Alpha Flight. I have no interest in reading like Bill Mantlo Alpha Flight. I have the smallest amount of interest reading the Scott Lobdell Alpha Flight because that just looks like it's weird.
I mean, here's what I will say. I found this by accident, and I'm really happy I did because I think Tom Morgan does a really good job with this issue. It's a little heavy on the inks. I think if it was a little bit more refined, the issue would look a little bit nicer. But I do think that he really still sells who the characters are, despite the fact that they're all in the same costume, right? And this weird, like Edgar Allan Poe-esque horror story that happens in this issue is pretty enjoyable. Like, I kind of liked it. I just wanted a little bit more. I wanted like 2 extra pages. I'm not going to say this is a good, not going to say this is a good comic. What I will say is that for the people who listen to this show, who love these weird things that we find and dig up, this might be worth one. Like, you'll read this in 5 minutes. It's entertaining.
If you don't know that this comic exists, this is one that like, it's so weird because it's like, this is 1992.
Yeah.
Like, this is the time when, of course, you're going to put an X-Men thing in this book because it's the biggest comic out there. So you chose X Factor because that's all Alpha Flight can afford, which I appreciate. But it's just, this is a bizarre little book.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good. I don't enjoy it. It's not making me want to care about any of the Alpha Flight characters any more than I already do. And that is a very low amount of care.
That's fair. I'm not as the reason I'm saying that people might want to check it out is A, for the visuals.
No.
And also for this wacky story of the dead bride. Because it's just
we're on the same page that people should read this.
Yeah.
Now, so clear. Where we rank things and whether we think people should read them or not are 2 incredibly different metrics.
All right. So I would say, I know I said that the other X Factor arc was better than Judgment War. I think this is worse than Judgment War.
Yeah, no, I do not think this is good. I think this is worse than that Generation X comic that we just covered.
Which is at,
I don't know. We just did it. We just put it on the list.
All right. I'm gonna keep working our way down. So at 746, we have a X Factor 110 and 111, which is where Guido dies. I think this is worse than that.
It is.
Gonna keep working my way down.
I'm looking at like Wildcats X-Men is at 786.
Yeah.
I think we're about in that ballpark.
Well,
that's where Mechanics is at. That's where IVX is at.
Yeah.
That's where Days of Future Present is at. Spotlight on the Starjammers. Halloween Jack versus Domino. Like that's the right spot.
this is fun enough, I think, to be in this area. So at 800, we have the X-Men 2 prequel comic, X-Men the movie X2 prequel comic of Nightcrawler.
X-Men United.
I think this
which was not what they called the comic.
Yeah.
But yes, no, this is better than that.
Is better than that. Is it better than Wolverine 102 and 103 where Wolverine and Elektra hang out?
Yes, because that is an inconsistent set of stories. One of those stories is good, one of those stories is bad.
I'm going to say this is probably in between Spotlight on Starjammers at 792 and that issue of X-Force where Halloween Jack ducks Domino at 793.
I am okay with that. This can be the new 793. It's Alpha Flight, baby. People keep trying to make Alpha Flight happen. Jed McKay's trying to make Alpha Flight happen today. And you know what? It's going to be as successful as all the other times.
Yeah, but I know we don't recommend Alpha Flight, but that issue is fun. Check it out.
We don't recommend Alpha Flight purely on the fact that I don't want to read Alpha Flight, and I don't think it's an X-Men comic.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. But Zach, this was a really fun prompt. So we got to thank Robert again.
We got to thank Robert. Robert, thank you so much for letting us talk about some interesting choices that people have made over the years. You want to be like Robert again, go on over to patreon.com/Battle of the Atom, and you too can get a good grade in podcast listener.
Nice.
People want that grade. People want to have a good grade in being a podcast listener.
Yeah.
Adam, what do you got going on? What do you have to pitch? What's happening in your neck of the woods?
So much stuff we've been doing on Comics XF within the last week. We had a little roundtable about Giant Size X-Men. Austin and I got back together for the third part of, I'm going to say I'm actually enjoying this arc of Gale and Marquez's Uncanny. So
that's
Austin
great.
and I are covering that. So check that out. I believe, I don't know if it'll be out by the time this comes out, but we're also going to be doing a piece about I guess it's the 50th anniversary of Ileana, because she appears in Giant Size. So technically it is the 50th anniversary of Magic. So we did a little convo about Magic. And in honor of Giant Size X-Men's time hopping, I did a thing about the top 10 time travel stories that we've ranked on this show. So folks can check out all of that cool content over at comicsxf.com. And you can follow on social, Adam Rec on Blue Sky and Instagram. Zach, what are we doing next week?
Next week, we're going to have a contest, buddy.
Ooh, what kind of contest?
The kind that you couldn't talk about on primetime television in the early 90s. I'm kidding. No, we're just going to have people fighting each other.
All right, that's
I would say real heads no, but it is like one of the most famous episodes of any sitcom ever. So like I would assume most heads know. Also, I've seen our listenership demographic. People know what we're talking about when we talk about the contest.
Not that
we are just talking about. We're talking about contests in general.
Yes.
But until then, folks, this has been Battle of the Atom. We hope you survived the experience.
Get it!